we'll come back to the just like website do's and don'ts in a minute. I'm sure you have a lot of perspective, probably have a lot of hours looking at these things, and you know what works and what doesn't, and can probably address a lot of common mistakes. I think though, just to maybe frame up the rest of what follows, let's kind of get on the same page by what we mean. When you say content marketing, do you have a content strategy? These are really like buzzy words right now in the modern like idea sphere for business people. And I always, buzzwords always are kind of a red flag to me. I'm like, okay, what are we actually talking about? So could you just, most listeners probably have a vague idea. Some people may be actually pretty deep down this rabbit hole, but, in its simplest form, like what is content marketing, and more specifically, how does it apply to tradies or contractors?
Well, if we go back even further, right? So, and this is something that I really want to, if there's one thing the listeners can take out of this podcast, it's this. What you guys do is only boring to you. So don't fall into the trap of thinking that, just because you're a plumber or you're a builder or electrician or whatever it might be, that your story is not interesting. Because for somebody that is looking to engage your services, your story is very interesting. The problem is you just are not telling it properly or at all, right? So when we go down the whole rabbit warren of, the content, at the crux of it is, how do we best communicate what we do and how we do it and who we do it for and why we do it? And while we're doing that, Benji, we're achieving one really significant thing. And this is one thing that's kind of hard to measure, but we're building trust and rapport.
Yeah.
And we live in the information age. People are coming to you and they're coming to your business because they want information. And as a business owner, it's your responsibility to give them that information. You look at your podcast, right? Like you guys are out there actively educating people about things that are relevant to their businesses. That's the whole point, right? Mm-hmm. And while you're doing that, you're building trust and rapport. People are like, wow, these guys got a coaching program, epic. I'm down for it. Like it's like you're serving them. And the problem is that so many people and businesses we see out there are so good at doing what they do, but they're so bad at telling that story. So the purpose of this podcast here is to empower you guys that are watching or listening to this, to put you in a position of power when you can take control of this thing, and you don't need a marketing agency to do it. You just need 10 minutes, a notepad and a cup of coffee, and you're on your way.
Why do you have a take as to why that might be? Like why people are so good at doing the thing, but so bad at telling the story? What's that about?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a prophecy, right? Like we're brought up as tradespeople, and I know because I am one. Like we're brought up swinging hammers and, and installing pipes and throwing stacks up and pitching roofs and, installing switchboards. Like we're not brought up knowing how to, talk about that journey. We're not even brought up knowing how to talk about business. Like we know nothing about that in the training of our, in our apprenticeships or anything like that. Well, it's essentially, and it's probably slightly different, over in North America. But I know, in Australia, for example, you finish your apprenticeship, you do your licensing course, and then here you go. Here's your license. Go trade as a business. And you're like, you're not equipped to run a business. You're not even equipped to use the word business in your vernacular. But sure enough, there's your license. Off you go. So, you then got to, these are things that like beyond your official training, you've got to go and invest in yourself to learn these things. And this is a big message. This stuff can be learned, guys. Like no one starts this stuff like amazing. Like you start bad and you get better. That's the whole process, right? So the important part is you start. Yeah. And so, when we're talking, the reason why most people don't do this is, first of all, because they don't know where to start, which is one thing that we're going to remove today. We're going to help them with that. And the second thing is they're afraid of it, and whether they like it or not, creating content is uncomfortable, especially when you don't really have.
You don't
got
to tell me that. I know exactly how uncomfortable it is. The lights are bright. You got to be well prepared. Once the camera starts, you really can't stop. It is a grind. Sorry, I interrupted you there. But I know exactly what you're talking about.
And you're referring to video, and video
Yeah.
is, there's that. And I of course, 75% of statistics are made up, but they talk about, like 90% of people fear public speaking over death. So essentially they're saying 9 out of 10 people would rather be dead than get up and present, right? So like we're doing video, which is, it is tricky. And this is like one of the things that, it really does take a lot of time getting used to. But I'll cast some perspective on how you can make these things easier for business and people and businesses, because it doesn't always have to be video. And when we're talking about content can span many different areas. The point of it is not so much what you decide to do, it's what you decide to talk about and how you structure those sort of conversations, because, we live in a world where there's a lot of noise, Benji. Like there's just noise everywhere, right? And, all you have to do is, open Google and search, Plumber Vancouver, to see noise, and it's going to be the same ads and the same blah, 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 right? So the whole purpose of what we're talking about here is, well, how can we stand out from some of the noise, and how can we do it in a way where we're actually being recent, frequent, and we're being useful, right?
Right.
Relevant. So, because
can I go back to something?
Essential. Sure.
Sorry, I just want to go. Maybe you're about to answer this, but you said something earlier. You're like where do we start? Like, if someone is listening to this podcast and like, fuck, Matt is totally right. I'm a really good craftsman. I do excellent quality work. The thought of telling my story is totally daunting and overwhelming. Like, what is square one for that person who maybe hears this, finds it compelling, believes in the whole concept, wants to stand out from the noise? What's square one? Listen, if you like that clip, you can watch the full episode by clicking here. If you're not yet subscribed, you probably should be, and you can do that by clicking right here.